Hi guys, Absolute Duelist here, coming at you with a new Yu-Gi-Oh video, along with Charmander in the background as always. And in today's Yu-Gi-Oh video, we're going to be doing something that I haven't actually done on the channel before. We're going to be doing a tier list today, a tier list of hand traps, specifically what hand traps you should be playing going into the upcoming format of Cyberstorm Access, especially seeing as we're going to be seeing new stuff such as the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine get introduced, Pearly becoming an insanely good deck, and just pretty much all the old decks still being really strong. So I thought this would be a great idea for a video, just to give you guys some ideas on what hand traps you should play, what you play in the main, the side, what's really good, what's really bad, and just giving you guys an idea of future Yu-Gi-Oh events as well with this. So yeah, let's go ahead and get onto the tier list maker and start talking about what hand traps you guys should be playing in your decks. So as you can see, we've got the tier list here. It has S for you must have this in your main deck, A for it can be in the main deck, B for have this card in your side deck, and C for it can be in the side deck, and D is just not good this format, don't touch that card. So let's go ahead and get into this and start talking about the cards in general. So starting off, we have a favorite of everyone's is Ash Blossom. Now Ash Blossom, I think this is kind of easy. Like, it's a card that is great against rogue decks, meta decks, every deck in general. It's got no downsides. I think this is an easy have it in your main deck. Like, Ash Blossom is just absolutely insane. It's never going to be a bad card. It's never going to be a card that's just rubbish, because it just stops your opponent at certain intervals and can essentially stop them from playing the entire game. Like, for instance, Ash Blossom can be great against the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine. Just go ahead and Ash the scale 1 when it's in the scale, and you can completely end their combo sometimes if they ain't got the Soul Piercer. It can go ahead and do a lot against Pearly as well, being able to negate their spells in hand if they're on a pure going second variant and they need to resolve that Pearly spell card to summon a Pearly from the deck. This card can essentially entirely stop them. Like, Ash Blossom in general is just a really strong hand trap, great against every deck in the game. Like, anything that searches or special summons from the deck, this is going to be good against, so you got to be playing it in the deck. Next, we have Contacting C. Now, this one is a funny one. This card was great last format because you could go ahead and summon it against Kashtira players and essentially stop them from being able to go into their XC summons. So it did have some really good utilities. It technically is still somewhat good going into the current format as well, because you can go ahead and use it against Pearly, stopping them from being able to XC summon to an extent, but they mainly XC summon with their effects, so it's a bit of a different situation there. I would personally say for Contacting C this format is it can't be in the main deck. Now, my reasoning behind this is it's a level 6 monster. So if you're up against the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine, they're just going to go ahead and summon the bike, use it as synchro material, and go ahead and go into your synchro plays. If you're going against Kashtira, they're going to be playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine as well, so they're going to be utilizing this for that. If you're against Pearly, they're going to use their effects to summon their Xyz monsters. Contacting C doesn't really do a lot this format, so I don't really feel like this card's going to be absolutely insane, and it's not as good as it was in the previous format. Next, we've got DD Crow. DD Crow is a funny one as well. Like, it's a card that's good in certain formats where there's a little graveyard orientation. This format, you could technically go ahead and say it's pretty good against Pearly. It's good against, like, Super Heavyweight Samurai because you can go ahead and hit the scales. Like, it does have its utilities to go ahead and stop things. So I would say DD Crow is probably C tier. And it's mainly because its utilization against Super Heavyweight Samurais. Like, say they've discarded a monster with Scarecrow to go ahead and summon their scales back, and then you just go and banish it. Like, you go ahead and get rid of that Soul Piercer, they're not going to be able to play the game with that Super Heavyweight Samurai engine, so you go ahead and completely turn that off to an extent, so it can be in your side deck. I just don't think it's a great main deck card right now, because it doesn't do a lot against everything else. Yes, it can hit Pearly, yes, it can hit specific decks, like, it can do things against specific archetypes, but the card is always, like, it's a niche card, it's not an insanely good card. Next, we have Ghost Reaper. It's just not good this format. Like, unless you're in the mirror match against a Pearly player, it's great. Like, if you're in the mirror match, this is an easy C tier. So, you know what? We'll put it in C tier. Just because if you're in a Pearly mirror match, you can go ahead and use the Ghost Reaper, reveal Noir in your extra deck, and then banish both their Noirs from the extra deck. So that's actually a reason to put it in C tier. Like, if you're playing Pearly mirror matches, or you're playing a mirror match of any kind, Ghost Reaper is really decent. I personally think there's better side deck cards out there that you could potentially be playing, but Ghost Reaper is a good card in general, just for the sense that it's great in mirror matches or tier 0 format. So it's nowhere near like an S tier, because we're not in a tier 0 format. Like, it's not like Purley's going to be the tier 0 deck, like we ain't got Maxi and stuff like the OCG has, so it's not absolutely insane. So I think C tier is actually a good area for it, just in case you do play a mirror match. Next we have Bestials. Now, Bestials are always going to be a funny one. Like, these hand traps are great in any format where we've got basically light and dark decks going to be absolutely insane. The Bestials will be absolutely insane in any formats like that. But the format we're currently in doesn't play a lot of light and darks. Yes, there's still Telements running around here and there, so it is somewhat usable against them. But looking at the best decks, we've got Purley, not really needing to utilize their Purleys in the graveyard to be able to play the game, so Bestials aren't going to do anything against that. You've got Kashtira, they don't play light or dark monsters, they just really play like every other attribute, so they don't really necessarily need to have stuff in graveyard, and they're banishing to begin with. And we've got other decks as well, like we've got the Adamantipator coming in the woodworks as well because of the Super Heavyweight Samurai stuff. Like, I think Bestials go into the D tier for this format, just because we're not looking at a format where Bestials are going to be insanely good, so I don't think it's necessary in the game. So yeah. Next we're going on to D-Shifter. Okay, so D-Shifter, Dimensional Shifter, is always a funny one. This card technically is absolutely insane. The fact that you can go ahead and discard this turn 1 to go ahead and turn off the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine, every Math Mech player in the game as well that exists, any graveyard oriented deck, Purley as well, being able to banish their spells from the graveyard to prevent them from going to head and attaching them from the graveyard with the green Purley X monster that can attach spells from the graveyard. This card is very, very insane. But where would it be on this tier list? Now, obviously, this card also depends on the deck that you're playing. If you need the graveyard, Dimensional Shifter's not something you want to be playing. It's not a card that you want to have in your main deck. It's not a card that you want to see in your opening hand, because you need your graveyard. So, in my personal opinion, D-Shifter, if you're playing like Kashtiras, if you're playing, let's say, yeah, Kashtiras, if you're playing Flunderies still, because you're on that deck, if you're playing a banish-oriented deck, this card is very easily, I would say, a B tier, because we still have Kashtira in the game as well, so this card isn't insane. But if you're not playing any of those decks, it's an easy C tier. I would say it's the top of C tier, just because of it's better than these two cards. But personally, for this list, because obviously we do still see Kashtira in the game, we still see decks that can deal with banishing, and if you're playing sprites, this card is still really good because you can still do full sprite combo with this card. I'm gonna put it in a B tier. I think it's a sensible B tier, just because the fact that it does deal with the entire Purley stuff, getting rid of all of their spells once they've used their effects. It does deal with stuff like Droll and Lockbird as well, which can hinder a lot of decks. It does deal with any graveyard-oriented deck, and if you are on these graveyard-oriented decks, don't play this card whatsoever. But if you're on Cash, if you're on Flu, if you're on Sprite, if you're on any deck that doesn't need the graveyard, D-Shifter is an amazing card, and if you open it against something like Math Mech, if you open it against Purley, if you open it against the random Telements players that are still running around, you're most likely going to win those games. So D-Shifter is definitely a card that does deserve to be in B in my personal opinion. Probably the bottom of B, but B nonetheless. Droll and Lockbird is the next one. Now, Droll and Lockbird is insane this format. This card is so good against so many different decks. So I'm just going to instantly put it in S tier above Ash Blossom. Now, the reasoning behind this is, and I'm going to make this very clear, every deck in the format searches multiple times. You drop this on a Super Heavyweight Samurai player, their entire engine is turned off, along with any other engine they're playing in the deck that searches. You play this against Kashtira, they activate the field spell, you drop this against Kashtira, you look at your opponent, and you're like, oh, so you can't search your Theosis, you can't search your spells, you can't search your monsters. You drop this against a Sprite player after they've just special summoned blue to search Jet. Oh, you can't search your starter now, you can't go ahead and search all these other cards. Droll and Lockbird, this format, in my opinion, absolutely insane, must be in the main deck along with Ash Blossom. And it's just really a strong hand trap, this format. Now, you can justify the cause to say it's an A tier. you can justify this to put it in A. But in my personal opinion, because the format we're going into, with the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine, with the Pearly that can go ahead and reveal multiple times a turn to go ahead and attempt to add a spell from the top of the deck to the hand, with the fact that we've still got the Kashtiras in the game, Drawn and Lockbird is just absolutely insane and fully necessary going into the next format. So, in my personal opinion, Drawn and Lockbird, absolutely insane, must be in your main deck. Next, Effect Veiler. Now, Effect Veiler is always a funny one. Effect Veiler is always a funny one because it's only being able to be used during your opponent's main phase, so it does have its hiccups here and there, but it is still a really, really strong card. Now, Effect Veiler for me, when it comes down to it, obviously, if I'm playing Imperm already and have space, I could play the Effect Veiler. But Effect Veiler, in my personal opinion, right now... Okay, I'm going to say this. If you are in this format, and you are playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine, and you have 3 slots for more hand traps, Effect Veiler is an A tier. It can be in the main deck if you're playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine, because it's essentially an additional hand trap to try and prevent your opponent from playing the game, right? Like, you can go ahead and discard it, negate something, negate a Scarecrow, negate the Kashtira card, go ahead and negate any of these things that you wouldn't be able to negate if you could play Imperm. So if you're playing a Super Heavyweight Samurai engine, or you have the space for it, Effect Veiler is an easy A tier. Now, if you're not playing that, I would say it's a D tier, like easy D tier if you're not playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine. But because the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine is in the game, and a lot of people are probably going to be jumping on it to be like summon double Omni Negate before they go into their full combo, we're going to put it in A tier just because it is still a decent hand trap. It can be in the main deck if you're playing it. You would never have it in the side deck. So we're putting it in A tier, probably the bottom of A tier, but still really decent. Now, next we have Kaijus. Now, we've just got Gamma Seal on the tier list, but we're talking about every Kaiju in the game, right? Now, Kaijus this format, in my personal opinion, are really, really good. Now, the reason behind this, the reason why they're really, really good, is for the fact that we're now in a Pearly format. Pearlies summon a towers that can't be affected by any activate effects, and can also detach 2 materials to go ahead and put things to the bottom of the deck. So I think Kaijus are really, really strong. Now, would you say though, if something like Kaijus are better than something like Lava Golem from last format that tributed 2 monsters instead of 1, especially when we're going into a format that essentially says you can't have multiple monsters on the board because of Pearly, but if you're going against an Omni Negate format, then you can go ahead and get rid of that Baron and Savage with Lava Golem. Now, I think just for the fact that Kaijus are Kaijus, and they only really work against one deck, I'm gonna put this in A tier, and that's pretty much because it can be in the main deck. Especially if you're playing like the Adventure package instead of the Super Heavyweight Samurai package, you can put this in the main deck, use it to tribute off your opponent's Pearly monster, or any hindrance on the board, then go into the Adventure package, go ahead and return it to your hand, and maybe do it again. But I don't think it's better than Lava Golem, because even though there's still one deck, which is Pearly in the game, that can just summon 1 towers, I feel like this is an A tier, or hell, it's even a B tier realistically, now that I'm thinking about it, because this is a going second card. So you know what, I'm gonna say it's a B tier, just because if you have this card against Pearly, if you draw a Kaiju and they've gone into their Noir and have nothing else, Lava Golem's going to be dead. So if you're against Pearly, you're probably going to want to take out the Lava Golems for the Kaijus. So we're going to actually say Kaijus are a B tier, just for the fact that you would probably main Lava Golem, right? If you're going to be playing something like that. So you're going to go ahead and want to have the Kaijus to go ahead and have for the Pearly players. So we're going to say Kaijus are B tier just because they're still decent. You should have them in your side deck just to deal with the Pearlies. But you can also have them in the main deck as well, if you so choose to play them instead of Lava Golem. Now, next is Infinite Impermanence. Now, this is an easy one for me. I'm going to say Infinite Impermanence is just an A tier as well. Like, it's above Veiler in every way, shape, or form. It's an insanely good hand trap. It doesn't trigger stuff like Tactical Talents, Frost, anything along those lines. It's just a really good hand trap. It's the better effect veiler in general. It's also a trap card that you can set and negate a whole column. Like, it can be in the main deck. If you're playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine, you wouldn't play this because it would just turn off the entire engine. But in general, it's an A tier card. Like, there's no real bad points on Imperm other than the fact that you need to control no cards to use it. So yeah, Infinite Permanence is still a really decent card. Next, Lava Golem. Now, we just talked about Lava Golem with Kaijus, so we're gonna say this. Lava Golem can be in the main deck. Like, Lava Golem is the better variant of Kaiju. It takes away your normal summon, obviously. So if you're playing a deck that needs to normal summon, do not play it in your main deck. You could put it in the side deck, for instance, but it's still a really decent card. But, for instance, Lava Golem is just really strong in this format for the fact that, well, looking at your opponent's boards, you're going to be seeing stuff like, you're going to be seeing double Omni Negates, you're going to see Kashtira stealing boards. Like, Lava Golem just goes ahead and gives you your zones back. It gets rid of the 2 Omni Negates. It does a lot, so you want to be able to play it. It can be in your main deck. You don't need to play it in your main deck. Like, probably play it if you're playing like something like Kashtira or Mathmech, because those are 2 decks that don't necessarily need their normal summon to play the game. But overall, Lava Golem is just a really strong card. It deals with the double Omni Negate. It deals with the zone stealing on your board. It's just a really decent card. Next, Evenly Matched. Now, this is another really interesting one. Last format, including myself, we saw a lot of people main decking Evenly Matched. Reason behind this is it can clear Kashtira boards, it clears back row boards, it clears big boards, like anything that doesn't have an Omni Negate, Evenly Matched deals with, especially in a format with Lava Golem, where we could tribute 2 of their negates and then just evenly match them. Like, Evenly Matched was a very, very strong card. But does it still deserve to be in the main deck? I'm gonna say no. It doesn't deserve to be in the main deck, but it does deserve to be in the side deck. And I'm gonna say the top of it. Like, if we can put it in the top, there we go. It's gonna be the best side deck card in the game still. I'm gonna say this is insanely strong still. There's nothing wrong with the card. The card is still really, really strong. It deals with everything the opponent has. Like, Evenly Matched is still an insanely good card that can just deal with back row decks, it can deal with monster builder decks, it can deal with Kashtira boards, it can deal with a lot of different things. So I think this card is still insanely good. I don't think it's main deck anymore, just obviously because if people are playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai stuff, you're not going to want it in the main deck. If you're up against a deck that, you know, just builds like 2 negates, like how are you going to deal with that if you don't have a way to remove it with like Evenly Matched, like, or a Kaiju, something to deal with that, and then go ahead and use the Evenly Matched. Like, Evenly Matched is still a really, really strong card and should be in every side deck, especially if you're playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine. I think you need tons of cards that you can sideboard into going second if you're playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine. So Evenly Matched is still an insanely good card, but I don't think it goes into the main deck anymore going forward, unless in case you're still playing the Kashtira stuff and you're not playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai stuff with it. Like, in that case, you could still main it, but I feel like it goes into the side deck now just because it was insane last format, but it's not going to be as insane this format, just for the fact there's going to be more negates, there's going to be more ways to stop Evenly Matched. So I just feel like it's a card that does go into the B tier, just because, yes, you should side it, you should have this in your side deck, but it's not necessary to have it in the main deck anymore. Now, going on to Ghost Spell. I always have issues with like these, like Ghost Spell. I think the card is interesting and is always really good. It's basically Ash Blossom for any graveyard interaction, but I don't think it's really necessary this format. Like, yes, you could go ahead and technically use it against a Pearly card because it can move. Actually, can you even use it against the Pearly card? Because it moves, it attaches materials from the graveyard, so I don't think Bell can actually interact with that. Because it's whenever a monster would be special summoned from the graveyard, added to hand, or yeah, banished from the graveyard, so it can't even stop that. So yeah, I'm honestly gonna say Bell is a D tier again. Like any graveyard interaction, it really isn't great. Like DD Crow is the decent one because it can be used, but Bell just it's always an interesting one for me. Now, Ghost, Ogre, and Snow Rabbit. I'm gonna be very blunt with this, guys. This is a B tier. This is the top of B tier for me, just for the fact that the Super Heavyweight Samurai exists, And you can go ahead and utilize this against that engine and be like, okay, so you've summoned your Prodigy, right? You've put the scale 1 into the scale. You're attempting to use it to search Soul Piercer. Looking at my hand, discard Ogre, go ahead and then destroy the scale. You don't get your Soul Piercer to hand, and also your entire engine is stopped. And if you're on Kashtira, you can't even special summon a Kashtira from your hand. So Ghost Ogre essentially stops the entirety of the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine. So I think this card can fully be in your main deck. You can definitely have Ghost Ogre in your main deck to deal with that sort of situation. So I'm going to say Ghost Ogre is an A tier. It deals with that. It's also can be utilized against other things, like you could use it on the Pearly monster when it's summoned, to go ahead and discard it, destroy the Pearly, put it in the grave. They have to waste more resources to go ahead and get to more Pearly monsters. Like, card is really decent. It helps in certain ways, and yeah, Ghost Ogre has always been one of those cards that come in and out of the format every now and then, so Ghost Ogre is a definitely good card. Now, going on to Ghost Mourner. Now, I think this is always going to be an easy one for me. Ghost Mourner is always, it can be in the side deck. Definitely above DD Crow and above Ghost Reaper. Reason behind this is, it's just time on the round. Like, generally, it's just time on the round. You're in time, you've got 3 of these in your side deck, you shove these in, your opponent's going first, they activate an effect with special summon a monster, you drop the Ghost Mourner, you look at your opponent and be like, GG? Because, like, they're just going to give you more life points at that point, and it's either they pass, or they take the Ghost Mourner challenge, which is similar to the Max C challenge, if you guys don't know. You can just draw more, but you gain more life points. Like, it really comes down to that, where it's like, yeah, no matter what you do at this point, I'm just going to gain life points constantly. So we're close to time. We're going to win at this point because of it. Ghost Mourner just deserves to be in C tier. It can be in the side deck, but it doesn't have to be. Now, Moonlit Chill. Now, this was also a card last format that was seeing play because it's somewhat decent, where if your opponent special summons on their turn, you can discard it, negate that effect, the effect of a special summon monster, and just in general, just deal them damage if it leaves the field, outside of obviously XC summoning and stuff. But is it good this format? That's the real question. Would I say Moonlit Chill is good this format? I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say it's a can be in the side deck. Like, it's one of those cards that, yes, has its perks, but it's not insanely good, where it's like, it's not as good as Vela because you can only use it at a specific interval. It's not as good as Imperm because it's still a monster. It's can technically, if your opponent special summons on your turn, you have to go ahead and use it as the Chainlink 1 in response to their effect on the summon, because you are using the chain. So if they summon something like Deneb from the graveyard, for instance, you have to go Moonlit Chill as Chainlink 1, and then they go Deneb as Chainlink 2. Like, just small things like that that really do bring the card down. But in general, it's a decent card. It's great against Kashtira. It's great against, like, random decks out there. I think it's a can be in the side deck. I don't think it's super high up. I think it's under Ghost Mourner because obviously Ghost Mourner can win you games, essentially. But card is pretty decent. Next, Chaos Hunter. This card was decent last format. It is not decent now. Card is still interesting, like being able to discard a card when your opponent special summons to special summon this, and then your opponent can't banish cards. Obviously, great against Kashtira, but we're in a Super Heavyweight Samurai format now. They're just going to make the Baron and pop this, so there's no point in having it in the deck. Lancia. Now, Lancia is also one of those ones that are always kind of decent. Like, against Kashtira, it's really great. Against Evenly Matched, it's really great. Like, the card has its benefits. But would I say it's any higher? I'm going to be honest, I think this is another C tier. Because definitely above the Moonlit Chill and also the Ghost Mourner, because the card, yes, is very good. It can go ahead and stop an entire Cash player's turn, essentially, because you just go ahead and drop it when they attempt to activate an effect that would banish, and you just stop that entire effect. So it just stopped that, and it stops them from making Shangri-La to be able to go ahead and take your zones, which is obviously very strong. The card is also very good in terms against any banish deck out there, like against Evenly Matched, as I said. Like, if you're going first, you go ahead and make your full board, you go ahead and add Lancia to hand. Maybe if you're playing Drytron, you can do that, or if you go ahead and make some other play, you have to get this to your hand. Like, it goes ahead and essentially says you can't be evenly matched as well, which I think is pretty decent. So it does have its utilities. It's great against banish decks, great against any card that banishes, and if you're against a person who plays multiple pot cards, for instance, like Prosperity and Extravagance, this card essentially turns those off. So card is pretty decent. I would put it in a C tier. Now, Raw Sphere Mode. the kaiju that also takes a normal summon but tributes 3 monsters. Now, this card saw play in Labyrinth last format. It was pretty decent. I don't think it's insane right now though. So in my personal opinion, I'm gonna say this card it can be in the side deck, probably above Moonlit Chill in terms of like, actually no, it'd be below Ghost Mourner, because you would only really utilize this in stuff like Labyrinth or decks that don't need their normal summon, or in general just against a deck that would make multiple games such as the Super Heavyweight. You know what? It would be great against the Super Heavyweight Samurai stuff, but the problem is it takes your normal summon, just like Lava Golem. But the difference there is that there's more decks out there that are going to make 2 monsters. Like how even Pearly can make 2 monsters on their turn 1, so Lava Golem is just better. But I don't know. Like, you know what? If you play Labyrinth, this card is great. It can be in the side deck, but I wouldn't necessarily put it higher than C tier, just for the fact that it's technically the weakest kaiju, because 1 is the soft spot for everyone. You can always tribute 1 monster. 2, majority of the time your opponents are going to have 2 monsters. 3, it's kind of pushing it a bit. You're never going to guarantee that they're going to have 3 monsters, right? So yeah, I'm going to say Raspi Mode is C tier. It's a good card. It's great in Labyrinth, so if you play Labyrinth or if you play a back row based deck, play this card. But I'm going to say for C tier right now, I'll just rather have Lava Golem majority of the time as well. So it's just things like that, right? Now, next, Retaliating C. Now, this is a actually interesting one. Now, if your opponent activates a spell card that would essentially special summon a monster, you special summon this card and Macrocosmos for the entire turn. So that is really decent when it comes to Retaliating C. It's a really good card because it's a Macrocosmos hand trap. Similar to D-Shifter, but in this case, it's essentially better because you don't need a graveyard to activate this card. So it does have its benefits there. And you can utilize this card against a lot of different decks. You can utilize this against stuff like Pearly. You can utilize this against decks like the Super Heavyweight Samurai Engine. You can utilize this against the 2 best decks in the game right now, and even Branded as well, being able to just, like, if they go ahead and try to fusion summon into anything but Lubellion, they're going to be banishing the materials used. So this card does have its perks. But would I say it's probably above D-Shifter or not? Now, I'm not too sure when it comes to this, because it is decent, and it does have certain restrictions. So you know what? I'm going to say Retaliating C it can be in the side deck. It will be above Lancia as well for now. It's because Retaliating C, it's a great card. It's a card that can do quite a bit in terms of it, but it's kind of restrictive in terms of when it can be played, where it can be played. Like, it's a good card, it's just where you can play it and when you can play it are the issues for me. So I'm gonna say it's a C tier. It can be in the side deck. If you feel like it's good against the Super Heavyweight Samurai Engine or anything along those lines, play the card, but I feel like C tier is a fair place to put this card. Now, next, Psy-Frame Gamma. Now, everybody out there knows I have a passion for this card. I hate Gamma. I despise Gamma. Gamma is my most hated hand trap because it does nothing 90% of the time. But because I've got to be honest with this tier list, this card is a C tier. This card is probably above the rest of the C tier hand traps. And if you're playing Super Heavyweight Samurai, it might be an A tier as well. Like, I don't know, I would probably put it slightly above Vela. You know what, if you're playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai archetype in your deck so you can use it. But, right, let's go ahead and talk about why it goes in C. Now, Gamma is not a card that should be in any main deck under any circumstances. If you go first with Gamma in your hand, and you're not playing a deck that can just go ahead and abuse spell cards to do anything before you go ahead and use your monster zones or special normal summon or anything along those lines, Gamma instantly gets turned off. The card does nothing if you control a monster. But if you're playing a deck that doesn't really use the monster zone, if you're playing a deck that can abuse synchro summoning and do things like that before you normal summon, Like, you activate, say, I don't know, Reinforcements of the Army, Sword Soul Emergence, anything that could be Ash Blossom. Gamma, absolutely insane. Special summon it from the hand, special summon driver, use it for link material, synchro material, anything along those lines. Gamma can be utilized for that. But in any other circumstance, this card does nothing because you have a monster on the board. So I think it's a candy side deck because it's decent going second. It's a decent card going second, don't get me wrong. But if you're going first, do not have this in your main deck unless you're playing the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine and you're scared of getting Ghost Ogred. Because honestly, you don't want to draw the driver as a brick. Technically, every one of these are a brick after you summon a monster. So I'm going to say C tier. It's great. It's the only hand trap that can technically negate the activation of hand traps. So it's necessary for that case. But I don't like the card, and I don't think it's necessary when you're getting hit by a normal summon of your own accord. You summon your own monster and you turn off a hand trap. That is not good in my opinion. Okay? Just frustration from years ago coming back up, guys. Like, that's just how it is. Now, the last hand trap on this list, Nibiru. Now, Nibiru the Primal Being. Now, this one is actually a funny one. This hand trap is technically a lot worse going into the Cyberstorm Access format, just for the fact that, one, Pearly become the best deck. This deck does not need to normal summon, or summon 5 times, I should say, actually. So, what does that mean? You don't need to summon 5 times to summon your Noir that's unaffected by activated effects, so Nibiru does essentially nothing. Looking at the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine, their 5th summon is always Boral Savage. So yes, when your opponent activates the Boral Savage effect, you can go ahead, tribute their Boral Savage, give them a token. Decent, right? Well, problem with that, after you go ahead and do that, they're going to Pendulum Summon and then summon Baron and destroy the Nibiru. So you've given them a 25 defense, 3000 attack token instead of the Savage, which is decent because it gets rid of an Omni Negate, but doesn't really do anything after that because they still have an Omni Negate and they still have all of their other plays that they have in that deck. So yeah, Nibiru, sadly, against the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine and Pearly, does nothing. But let's look at the other decks. Like, if you're playing against Pure Kashtira, this card is great. They're going to summon 5 times, you're going to tribute their board, and you're going to be really happy. If you're against any combo deck that doesn't make an Omni Negate before the 5th summon, this card stops those decks. Like, Nibiru is still a really, really strong hand trap. The problem with this card right now is that because we've got stuff like Pearly and the Super Heavyweight Samurai engine and all of these new cards coming up in Cyberstorm Access, Nibiru, sadly, it just drops down the chart. Like, this format, the current format we're in, I'd have said this was an easy B tier. Like, it should be in your side deck under any cost. The card is insane, the card is great, but because the format that we're going into is just Super Heavyweight Samurais and Pearly pretty much to an extent, I'm gonna have to say this is C tier. This is C tier. It's the top of C tier because I think it's the best hand trap out of all the ones in C tier, but it's just C tier. Like, you can't say it's any better. Like it doesn't get any better. Like, sadly, because of the format, because of Super Heavyweight Samurais, because of Pearly, the card just drops in terms of how good it is. So yeah, that is the tier list though, guys. That is my entire tier list, my thoughts on what hand traps are good, where they are, should you side them, can they be in the side deck, are they no good this format. This is the entire tier list of my ideas for every hand trap in this format. Now, guys, what do you personally think? Do you think this is correct? Do you think these hand traps are in the correct areas? Do you think Evenly should definitely be in the side deck still? Do you think Lava Golem is still good to be in the main deck? Do you think Droll is definitely an S tier hand trap or not? Or do you think any of these C tier hand traps should be higher? I know some of you are going to say Gamma. I don't agree. I'm sorry. I hate the card. But in general, what do you guys think on a lot of these, like, ratios? Like, where do you think these are? How do you think these place? Do you think these should be where they are? Like, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below, just to, you know, get an idea of just what my viewers think on where hand traps should be right now. So yeah guys, that is all I have for this video. I hope you did enjoy it. We might do more of these in the future, like tier list videos, to give you guys an idea of what I think on certain things in the format. Who knows, maybe we'll do a tier list on like random things, like maybe structure decks or maybe archetypes in general. Maybe we'll do a huge video of just like the best archetypes in the game, like where do they go in terms of archetype leveling and everything. I'd love that would be a fun video to make, maybe a stream, because I think there's so many archetypes in the game, so it would have to be something like that. But yeah guys, tell me what your thoughts are on this in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And yeah guys, that's all I have to say. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Absolute Duelist signing out. Later all.